Good evening, sir. And I must say that I'm privileged to, what I will say, moderate this fireside chat. And a privilege because I'm speaking to sir not as a tax counsel, but as an academician with vast knowledge and experience. And we would like your views. Of course, we would certainly like your views on maybe, there are a few questions on tax as well, but by and large, we would like your views as a thinker. I have had the privilege of reading some of your articles, your books, etc. So let me straight away set the ball rolling. The topic is 4 hurdles to overcome for Viksit Bharat. It's nearly 8 decades after we've achieved independence. When the British left divided India, it was an impoverished nation, devastated by their plunder of 150 years. In 1947, developed country was virtually a distant dream. We were accustomed to the adage of a third world country. This dispensation has led our citizens to believe that the goal of Viksit Bharat is within striking distance. The FM, in her successive budget speeches, has said that this vision is based on 4 pillars: Yuva, Garib, women, which is Mahila, and the Annadata. What is your vision, sir, of Viksit Bharat? Is it to be measured only by economic strength, GDP, or would you have in your mind certain other parameters for reaching the goal of Viksit or a developed country?
First of all, before I answer the first question, good evening to all of you.
Good evening, sir.
And I think if there is some recording, I'll first show it to my mother. Last evening when my wife and I were chatting with my mother, she was very upset that I was going to Bombay. So she said, "Tula mahiti nahi ka kiti paus padtoy? Koni yenar nahi tujha program la." Tena sang te adjourn kara kai honar nahi hai. So I'll just take a photograph and tell her that, look, this is the enthusiasm of Bombay. Rain, weather, whatever it is, it will be. So I'm glad I came. Of course, also the other thing is I travel quite a bit, but today was one of the most adventurous flights I had while landing. But thanks to the BCAS to invite me for this 78th founding day. On a personal note, when I joined my senior, Mr. Subraya Padmanabhan Ramamani, in 1981, it was a leading tax firm. I can tell you honestly, not because I'm here, but BCAG was a journal we all look forward to. My senior would invariably read BCAG. And one journal I never missed was BCAG, and the other thing I read religiously was Chartered Secretary for Companies Act and other provisions. So it's a privilege to be a part of the 78th founding day celebrations. I must also congratulate all those people who have written books. As an author myself, I know how difficult and what a lonely task it is to write books. And I'm deeply impressed by the books here, and particularly by this Gita for Professions in Gujarati. I can tell Mr. Chetan Dalal that my wife is from Baroda, so she'll definitely read it in Gujarati. She can read and write extensively, because when we got married, they would get Gujarati newspapers at home and so on. So anyway, so it's a nice beginning here. I'll also just take 1 minute and say that how much I owe to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. When I started my practice, very little money, and one way which helped me was writing articles and taking lectures. And I can honestly say that I learned income tax by teaching at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India from 1981, and I was teaching that in 1994. And I really learned taxation by teaching. Myself, Mr. Bhupati was there, Mr. Upadhyaya was there, and I think Bhupati and me are still there. But in another slightly humorous tone, I suddenly got a call from my student. So I keep getting these calls. I meet people at the airport. They say, I was your student in 1986 batch, this batch, that batch. So suddenly on Teacher's Day, I get a call. I said, good morning, sir, do you remember me? I said, no, I don't know who it is. I'm so and so. I said, very nice, what are you doing? I'm fine. No, I just called you because I just realized that you're the only teacher of mine who's alive. And therefore I called you. So perhaps unintended black humor, but this is how the thing was the case. So there's a chartered accountant who called me and said that I was the only teacher who's alive. So, and now I'm glad that we took up this thing of a fireside chat. And for me speaking for 40 minutes and boring the audience to death, I suggested to the moderator that I'll speak less and we'll keep more time for question answers, because this is completely which keeps on bothering me all the, where we are going, what is going to happen to the nation and so on and so forth. First, sir, I will take a small objection to your saying that the British plunder and devastation and so on. There is no doubt that they must have exploited us, but to say that it was a plunder and devastation will be a slightly an exaggeration. In my reading of history, the worst thing that the British did was the Bengal famine, where 3 million people died. It's totally unpardonable what happened when wheat was there and it was not given to the people. And if you just took back 3 million people died in Bengal and 6 million people died in the Nazi Holocaust. We keep talking of Nazi Holocaust, but we completely forget about the Bengal famine. Apart from that, but as a dispassionate person, we can't say it was a devastated nation. Germany was devastated, Japan was devastated, but not India. And you had a huge infrastructure. You had 12,000 kilometers of railways, universities, ports, and so on and so forth. So I think we had a platform and we could have developed. In my opinion, what we lost was from 1950, 47-50 till 1991 was the endless socialism, nationalization, which was a huge setback. And 91 there was a change, and then it continued. This government has also taken much more steps to go towards a market economy and so on. As far as my impression of Viksit Bharat is concerned, first, it is Viksit Bharat 2047. I place a great deal of importance on goal setting and time management and so on. And Elon Musk put it beautifully. He said, a long goal is a wrong goal. Unless there's a sense of urgency, you will not meet. So I think Viksit Bharat 2047, we have lost half the battle. We should advance it, say Viksit Bharat 2030, and not so. The faster the closer the end point, the more action we'll take. So apart from that, according to me, the most important thing we'll have to do is to focus on manufacture, on employment. As I go ahead, that is the thing. And I'll start my lecture by saying that just last month I wrote an article in the Indian Express and I called it the Focus Like Deng or Focus Like Arjuna. And those of you in the audience, one of the best biographies I've read so many, is one of Deng Xiaoping. I'm just going to finish it now. It's by a Harvard sociologist called Ezra Vogel. And what is most important about the thing is this, which is important for all of us as professionals and audience. I'm just taking slightly more time at this point because we talk about Viksit Bharat. As you know, Mao Zedong in the Cultural Revolution, he sent back all the intellectuals into the villages and farmers. Deng himself was a clown's cap was posted on him, he was humiliated. All these people went back to the villages. 1975, when Mao Zedong was dying, or he was almost normal, he brought back Deng. He realized the Cultural Revolution had failed. Now, what is most important is Japan opened up because in the late 1800s, they sent 4 missions across the world. And they came back and they said, we should learn from the West, and that's how Japan developed. In fact, if you know, those of you who follow World War, the fastest plane in the Second World War was the Mitsubishi Zero, a Japanese plane. One of the biggest aircraft carriers was the Japanese aircraft carrier. So they were technologically advanced. Coming back to Deng, which is a great lesson for all of us. Study groups went out of China to European countries, US, and they came back. They reported to Deng. And on 2nd December 1978, Deng Xiaoping writes a memo. It's called a historic memo. And he makes just 3 points. He says, first, we must acknowledge that we are terribly backward. Second, we must accept that our methods have not been successful. And third, this is the most important, we must learn from the practices of the capitalist West. Now, if you realize in a strongly Marxist country, for him to say that we have failed and let us imitate the capitalists, there is a huge leap. So I think for Viksit Bharat also, of course, we are not that backward. We are much, much more developed than what China was in those days. But I think it's a learning experience to introspect and see where we are now and what will make us Viksit Bharat. My vision of Viksit Bharat is the focus should be on manufacture and employment, because particularly with AI, we'll have to really rethink where we are going ahead. So I would say focus mainly on manufacture, because services may get reduced because of AI, but manufacture is one sector. Without manufacture, we cannot be resilient. And we must aim to have 25% of the GDP from manufacture in 6 to 7 years. That's the essence of Viksit Bharat.
Right, sir. Good beginning. Another question that always bothers me is that while we opened doors to the world in 1991, maybe not by way of choice, but some degree of compulsion. In today's world, no country can really exist insulated from events across the globe. Yet, in the last decade or so, we see a great emphasis on becoming self-sufficient or Atmanirbhar. Do you see a dichotomy, a contrarian point in being in globalization and being self-sufficient? And do you believe that we can achieve a Viksit Bharat which is self-sufficient, or will the desire, burning desire to be Atmanirbhar have a slowdown on the pace of growth? What is your view?
A very interesting question. Actually, you're right. It's a paradox. On the one hand, you want to be Atmanirbhar, which is self-reliant, the Swadeshi thing, vocal for local and so on and so forth, and also globalization. In fact, we have entered into so many free trade agreements in the last years, more of opening up. How do you manage? Again, my view is, if you're going to be Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, it is only by making India economically more strong. So I would say that we should be Atmanirbhar in a globalized economy by making our own systems much more stronger, manufacture much more stronger. Simple thing, I'd gone to Junagadh for a All India Federation of Tax Practitioners seminar, and I was at Rajkot Airport, Kirasar Airport, and there's a luggage trolley. So the luggage was taking time, so I just saw the luggage trolley. The trolley is made by Wuhan Engineering Company, China, the luggage trolley. So, and when I came to Chennai, all airports authorities, the trolleys are made by this Wuhan company. So that shows that where is the distance we have to go. I mean, if trolleys are being imported, then an eminent past president of the CA Institute told me that India imports 1300 crores of balloons, rubber balloons for birthday parties, all imported from China. And 35-40% comes to Chennai because the main person is in Chennai. So when they asked him, why are you doing it? He said, no, sir. In Tamil, he says it's a headache to manufacture. We better to trade. So the most important thing for Atmanirbharta is to become a nation of manufacturers rather than of traders.
Right, sir. Now that you mentioned in your initial remarks China, the distinction, as I would look at it, between China and our country is that we are a democracy with all its imperfections. I recall a British premier who said that democracy is a luxury which India can ill afford. Today, yes, we are a democracy with all its imperfections. Is democracy an impediment to fast-track economic growth? And assuming that that is correct, in your view, is a developed country with a form of government other than democracy really worth it? Or is it alright if the pace of growth is slower, but we always respect and involve all stakeholders and be together? So is democracy an impediment? Because we hear that, okay, this is possible in China because China is not a democracy. In a democratic process, things will be slow. What is your view on that, sir?
Yeah, actually, this debate is there ever since I was in Ruya College in Bombay, that India should be a benevolent dictatorship. That was the idea, that we should have a strong man leading and so on. I feel very strongly about it. I think democracy is the best, and I don't think democracy and economic progress are incompatible. They are not sworn enemies. You can be democratic and you can be pro. I mean, what stops everybody from coming to the office at 9:15 in the central government or any state government? There is no excuse. You don't need to be a dictatorship to be on time, to do things on schedule and so on. So that's one thing. Secondly, please don't forget that democracy has got a great room for correction. You see election after election. Look at Tamil Nadu, for example. Who thought that this young actor will become the chief minister? That's the beauty of democracy. You can always change the government, whereas if you lose that, you will never again do it. And that's happened again and again. So I think democracy is a non-negotiable basic, and we can do all we can in a democracy. Singapore is a very small example, and barring China, I don't think anybody has, and that too China has become because it adopted capitalism, not communism. But what's the cost? 40 million people died in China in the Cultural Revolution. I don't think it's worth paying that cost for anything.
I entirely concur, but because even in the small debates around our intelligentsia, we always believe that this is because we are a democracy, China is different, though I don't concur with that. So one more factor, which the classical definition of democracy is by the people, for the people, and for the people. Today the emphasis seems to be on top-down growth or top-down situation, that approach, rather than a bottoms-up approach. Do you think that there needs to be a change in this approach? Far greater delegation and involvement of stakeholders is necessary to achieve this dream of a Viksit Bharat. Is a change in approach necessary? Because I believe that today there is far little delegation in governance, in administration, rather than it should be. Should this change?
Yes, I personally believe that it should change. Unfortunately, it is too much of centralization from center to states, and at the state level also, no state government is willing to. I mean, the 93rd constitutional amendment brought in panchayats and municipalities. Right? They said it has to be at the lower level. There should be devolution of power, devolution of finance. Why blame the center? Which state government has encouraged panchayats? And elections are not held. Everybody has to go to Supreme Court, get a direction to hold an election. So panchayats and municipalities are not there. And I have appeared in many PILs for farmers, etc., particularly on pollution and so on. And what the impression I got is, at the ground level, they know far more what they want than what can be sent from Chennai to the southern, or from Bombay to various parts of Maharashtra. One other important statistics is, in all developed countries, the number of employees in the federal thing is normally 1/4 of what they are in the local governance. In India, it's just the opposite. We have 4 times the number of people in central vis-a-vis what are in the lower level. So decentralization will be a very important step. Yeah, but it's difficult to let go of power. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when we should encourage this.
Yes, hopefully.
Is something
Actually, very often, if you see the constitution, you asked about democracy. If you read the provisions of Panchayat, Part 9A and Part 9B, so well drafted. If you there's a separate schedule, they have given taxing powers, they are given all the powers. If you just implement that Panchayat and so on, it will be a great development.
On coming to economics, in a global world, we really do require investment from foreigners. Recently, I heard a video by Mr. Ajit Ranade, who expressed the concern that in recent years, net FDI has been falling. Admittedly, there is FDI, but there is a significant outflow. And he believes that this is on account of attractive subsidies for investment by the US and Europe, the emerging geopolitical situation in the aftermath of the West Asia conflict, high valuations of Indian shares and equities, and the regulatory uncertainty are impediments to FDI inflow. What is your view on this?
See, as I say, if you want to attract FDI, India must be attractive as an investment destination. The soil of India must be fertile for investments. And today there are some impediments, though they have removed some hurdles, but still there's a long way to go. And I wrote an article also one time back, and I put it like a equation. I said ease of doing business is equal to ease of starting a business plus ease of running a business and ease of closing a business. Now, ease of starting and closing most of the items come under the state list of the constitution, land laws, regulations, and so on. Running comes under central laws, tax, etc. Your SEBI, Companies Act, and closing business is very important. Now, it's a nightmare to close a business, and when I speak to people, they say that look, the odds are that we may close down. What's our exit thing? And the other thing in FDI, which I've talked to people, is that we are focusing on this global investor forum. There'll be big seminar where people will say 8 lakh crores have been announced. Ultimately, not even 2% is realized and so on. But I spoke to some people. They said you focus on the smaller industries. People who invest $10 million, $20 million, the Mittelstand of Germany. They will be the real investors because nobody's going to put $1 billion in India just like that. So the focus on FDI should be on the smaller industries. And I'm told by some consultants that if you come at 10 million, no ministers want to see you also. They only want the Foxconn and the Apples and so on to be there. But the real focus should be on the...
Very much agreed, sir. One of the factors which is driving FDI away is regulatory uncertainty. And the recent Supreme Court decision in Tiger Global has totally changed the way DTAAs are interpreted. Treaties play a pivotal role in investment decisions. What is your view? What do you believe, sir, is the importance of bilateral investment treaties? Will the Indian model really work? Your view, sir?
Well, you brought in Tiger Global, which is a sensitive issue. Anyway, I feel with all due respect, the decision is not correct, especially when the investment came in before 17. The judgment records the statement of Sri Arun Jaitley, the judgment records the thing on 1st March that any investment prior to it will not be disturbed. So it is a big shock because people, they say that look, if we can't believe your circulars and watch your finances, it's a huge doubt and everybody wants certainty. Now today, those people invested, actually if you see Tiger Global, they invested in Flipkart. Right, 2011 to 2000, all investments came. It was a pooled fund. People from 40, 50 countries invested. That's how they came from Singapore. And all of them thought that when they get exited, there will be no capital gain. That was all the impression. Now, if you then shock them 13 years down the line, what happens? So one person told me, if I invest today, I don't know what will happen in 2039. Right? We don't know. So that's the uncertainty which is really dangerous, which has to be set up. And I must say that since I've been practicing for almost 46, 47 years, I find that one thing, I don't know how many of you realize, once it's a large amount involved, then any step is taken to save that tax. Like Vodafone, there are n number of cases where 2 shares were sold by one non-resident, no problem, everything was over. Come Vodafone, they said, no, this is not there, the whole thing is in India. Then you make a retrospective because you don't want to lose that thing. Tiger Global also, because the amount is large, you go any extent and twist it and take the loss. So that brings a huge amount of uncertainty, which the department should not do. You now the Fao Jiao, the statement was if it's not signed, throw it in the dustbin. But yet you go to Supreme Court and start arguing, no, this has to be done. And again the retrospective amendment. So all these are very big shake-ups. On bilateral investment treaty, it is my wish that we go back to the old treaties which we had like everybody. Today, if you see the BIT which is formed, it has got 2 basic problems. One is it doesn't have the FET clause, fair and equitable clause. it excludes taxation because, see, if you see the bilateral investment treaty, the standard format, it doesn't talk of taxation as such. It's a difference between BIT and a DTAA. BIT's basic clause, Article 5 is a FET clause. So if India enters into a treaty with UK, investors in India expect fair and equitable treatment in UK and vice versa. Other important article is Article 7, the expropriation clause, that you can't expropriate the assets. Now, whether White Industries or Kane, the bilateral investment treaty, I say, what is the difficulty in India saying, come to India, invest, we'll treat you fairly, we will not have retrospective taxation. Be bold and say that. You want to be a first world country, be like how Japan is, Germany is, so on and so forth. That is the whole trouble. And the Kane India, which we argued, the reason why the Republic of India lost was retrospective taxation. If you go to bilateral, and the whole argument was, all these treaties are favoring developing countries. I'm sorry, there are, as of 2021, I don't know, latest study, there are 36 decisions on taxation and bilateral investment treaty, and out of 36, I think 19 are in favor of the states. So majority are in favor of the state rather than the SSC. And on retrospective taxation, there is a landmark decision called Posha versus Mongolia, where Mongolia made a tax which was prospective. There was a huge increase in gold prices, so they increased the tax substantially. So the investors said that, look, we invested, it was 10%, now suddenly you make it 30%, it's not fair. The tribunal said every country has a sovereign right to increase tax prospectively, but if it is retrospective, different consideration arise. They should have seen that and settled the matter, but unfortunately the matter went on, and so I think we should respect DTAAs, and more important, we should have a bilateral investment treaty where we have taxation. The other difficulty in a BIT which India is proposing is that there is something called exhaustion of remedies clause. So if a Japanese investor has to come against India, he has to first fight Indian courts, go up to Supreme Court. If he loses, then he goes to BIT, which is paradoxical. Suppose I lose in Supreme Court, what's the purpose of the award after that? Now they said we'll keep it for 5 years. You start the litigation in India. If 5 years nothing happens, then you go for arbitration. If these two things are there, nobody will sign the treaty. So the last BIT, only 2 countries signed it, some Belize and some Sudan or something. I don't know, when I went to the net, Belize has a population of 120,000 people. We want treaty with Germany, Japan, etc. Which should have taxation, which should have this. That's my opinion.
Yes, sir. I entirely endorse this. And you rightly said that ultimately figures make a world of a difference. We hear the revenue day in and day out saying that, okay, if the courts do this, this will affect 10,000, 4,000, 20,000. Those figures also keep varying, but nonetheless, the endeavor of this government is to attract big ticket investment. We have a large number of MOUs signed at Davos, yet very little investment really fructifies. So we have this dispensation vouching for the Make in India project. That does not seem to have taken off. While services are currently driving economic growth, as you rightly said, sir, manufacture will be result in creation of employment, which should be our goal. What do you really think needs to be done in this regard?
I was just, recently I got a blood pressure monitor for my mother. It is made in Vietnam. I bought a refrigerator the other day, last 6 months ago. It is made in Thailand. So then I wonder, why aren't they making it in India? So I went to Claude, the AI engine, and I said, put a question. Suppose I got $100 million to invest in an electronics industry. What would be the comparative things of Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and India? It throwed up very interesting statistics. So my thing is that we have got all the engineering talent, we've got all the facilities, we've got the brain power here. My view is, I don't know if all of you agree, if we can benchmark and say that if Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam and Thailand, Malaysia, one more country, I forget now. So I didn't put Singapore, some other, yeah. I said, Unless we offer more than that, why should that person come and invest? Because the biggest market is here, 1.4 billion people. It makes much more sense to make it here. So my suggestion is if we can benchmark them and see what the competitors are doing. See, ultimately you have to market the country. So if you offer more than what they do, for example, latest in Malaysia, they got some tax of 12% incentive tax. I don't know the exact detail. And that when that Claude report came, it's very, some of you can try it. You get a very good idea of what are the competitive regulatory regimes and tax regimes in our neighboring countries.
So we need to do desperately something about manufacturing, because unless that grows, we don't have a permanent employment sort of situation, which is what is necessary for to pacify our restive youth. While on employment, do you not feel, sir, that you have not paid adequate attention to our MSME sector? In the sense, I read a book some years ago about Indian Jugaad. We have the significant amount of talent in our MSMEs, and yet there are registered 7.85 crores MSMEs as of 2024. They employ close to 39 crore people, which is second only to agriculture. And yet, the 2016 demonetization seems to have broken their back. Can we do something to ensure that MSMEs have a much greater role to play in our economy?
Yeah, one important positive is government has taken a lot of steps in reducing various regulatory compliance of our MSMEs. There is a lot of relaxations have taken place at the level. But in fact, a friend of mine has just finished his PhD thesis on the MSME sector. So he just sent me his report. It is startling that, as you say, it's micro, small, medium. Out of that micro, small, medium, 99% is micro. And 99% micro, they employ less than 10 people. So only 5 lakh business entities in India employ more than 10 people. So that is the startling statistic. So MSME has to be focused. That's the spinal cord or the backbone of the economy. Unless that is strengthened. And what the PhD thesis says is we could certainly do further reduction on the regulatory hassles. Simple thing, you got the same register under the Shops and Establishments Act, same under the Payment of Bonus Act, same under the Wages Act. So again and again, multiple problems are there. But this is an area, you're right, we have to completely focus on. That will be more than the larger industries. See, because now what's happened is it is very difficult to put up a greenfield refinery with the Land Acquisition Act, the new laws where you have to give employment to those farmers and so on. It takes 48 months. If everything goes to schedule, it will take 48 months to acquire huge tracts of land for a large refinery or a steel plant. So the focus should be on MSMEs where it's much easier for them to take off and improve. Yeah. And one, like for example, this 45-day payment has been a huge benefit for the MSME sector. Yeah.
Right, sir. While you did mention in our earlier interaction that any mention of judicial delays is something which would take up too much of time, yet when a council is across, the temptation is too much. Just one small question, sir, that today also we as citizens believe that judiciary is the last bastion of, this is our savior. So there was a question put to the Supreme Court Registry in 2024, and they had nearly 20 or 22 cases more than 3 decades old pending in the Supreme Court. Can we not do something about this?
Now first of all, I'm not trying to support the judiciary, but those of you who got time, there's a super website called National Judicial Data Grid, which gives you the status of cases all over India in the district courts, in the high courts, year-wise, topic-wise, subject-wise. 70% of all cases in India are over in 5 years. We hear the medium that it is 30 years. Yes, there is a delay. I'm not saying that there is no delay. I don't say that also. But there's a large number of disposals also take place. Now, there are standard things, vacancies are there and so on and so forth. But also one more thing I'll tell you, 2 things which I wanted to put to the audience. I am been appointed amicus curiae. There is a matter called Lok Prahari, and we are suggesting that look, today 62 is a retirement age. 62 is no age at all. I mean, if I was a High Court judge, I would have retired 8 years ago. So, all physically fit, you have to seriously think. So, there is a provision in Article 224A to appoint ad hoc judges. So, we put a proposal to make ad hoc judges. Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul took a lot of interest, but he retired unfortunately. But the whole thing is, if he is appointed, what salary will he get? Will he be higher in seniority? Will he get a house? Will he get a car? So much of time is spent on all this thing, but main thing has to be done. So we have suggested steps like that. We can appoint ad hoc judges. And on delays, kindly note two things. In the High Court, if you take the total number of cases in the High Court, 4 states, 4 High Courts have 52% of the national arrears. It's skewed. Bombay, Calcutta, Madras and Allahabad, these 4 put together have 52% of the nation's arrears. If you go to the district judiciary, 54% of the cases are in 5 states. All these states put together, and I think Punjab and Haryana or Gujarat, one state. These are the high. So it is completely different, and the way to judicial reform is not this fast track court or Lok Adalat. I think you should tailor it to individual states. Like in Bombay, commercial law is the big problem. If you go to Jharkhand, mining legislation is there. So each state is like a country by itself. So you have to tailor the things for that. And I'll just tell you one thing. As a great, I said I'm obsessed with time management and so on. When I was a lawyer, young lawyer with little practice, I used to go to City Civil Court. I had very little tax work, but this was the bread and butter. And a lot of time will be wasted in calling work. I don't know if you've gone to City Civil, calling work. In the morning, they'll call out the work, So and so, and keep on giving dates, your tariq, tariq. That's the first part of it. We sponsored, through the Palkiwala Foundation, a study through Daksh in Karnataka. We took 6 civil courts in Karnataka, 6 criminal courts at the magistrate level, which is where 70% litigation is. We found that in the civil courts, 48% of the time is spent on calling work. Just calling and adjourning, calling and adjourning. In criminal courts, 52% of the time was spent on calling work. So we made a suggestion. Justice A.P. Shah was very enthusiastic, but then he retired and now it's an orphan point. We said if all this work can be shifted to a registrar or to a retired judge, the trial court can start the trial at 10:30 because there are total 300 minutes of working per day, 5 hours. Now if 48% goes, almost 140, 150 minutes are gone in just calling work. So that is, we can also apply management principles to improve the productivity.
Very right.
So you can double productivity without doubling the judicial strength.
Right, sir. One final question from me before we throw it open to the audience. This is an audience of professionals who, while contributing to the nation in their professional careers, would also be willing to contribute as citizens to the task of nation building. What do you think the role that we professionals can play, and how can our contributions be structured to have a lasting impact?
I think in nation building, I don't think anybody has more important role to play than chartered accountant, because you know the economics, you know taxation, you know. So, not that because I'm invited as a chief, but I honestly feel so that you got a overall holistic thing of tax, economics, and so on and so forth. When you talk of nation building, I just watched an interview of Jensen Huang, who's the NVIDIA. If you on YouTube, just put Jensen Huang and the Mint, you'll get that interview. It's a beautiful interview. So the person asks him, do you think China is way ahead of America in AI? AI is the buzzword now. So he had made some statement about China and it became a huge media issue. He said, look, as usual, the press took it up and some sensational part is, but he said when you talk of AI, you talk of a stack. And what is the AI stack? And he puts it, he says it's first infrastructure, power, computing, applications. So he gave the 4 things. So like that, I think if you take nation building, it's a basic stack, your infrastructure, your regulations, your tax and so on. So I think in regulation and tax, chartered accountants can play a big role and lawyers can also play a big role. My only sense is that when we give suggestions, we are on so many panels, we give suggestions, many of them are not taken up. All I expect is that the government should say why they are rejecting the proposal. At least they can acknowledge it. First of all, it's not acknowledged. Secondly, once we give a proposal that change section 47A like this, 147 reopening, make this change. One request could be we should keep on making suggestions, we should not give up. But one thing from the other side could be to at least give a feedback that these are not acceptable. I am on some committees now and we keep giving suggestions from time to time. And the government says, look, it takes time to accept it, we have to talk to so many stakeholders and so on and so forth. But I think we can do. Now GST Council meets, so you can perhaps give regular suggestions to the GST Council, they will take it up for consideration.
Right, sir. Now time for audience interaction. Any questions from the audience, please?
Actually, I wanted to have more of audience, so that's why I said let me speak only for 35 minutes.
Good evening, sir. I'm Pramod Shah. I represent Institute of Company Secretaries of India. And sir, you referred to Chartered Secretary. I was very happy about it. Sir, there are 2 small observations we would seek from you. One is, sir, you mentioned that employment is very important. Sir, employment, manufacturing and employment. Sir, now employment is demographic dividend. What is your opinion? And number 2, about the congestion of the court cases. To what extent ADR can support or can reduce the burden, sir?
Yeah, you raise a very important point, demographic dividend. We have the largest youth in the world now, and what I was talking to some other person the other day in some program, they said that with AI, unless the next generation is not necessarily AI, but basic skills is there, the demographic dividend should not become a demographic impediment, but harnessed well, this demographic dividend would be a great benefit. Yes. I was told that the new CBSE syllabus has been completely revamped. From rote learning, it has gone to much more inventive learning and so on. But demographic dividend, I think we have to really improve it's very easy to sit here and talk, but that's the point that engineering, I was shocked to see that in many engineering colleges, 40% staff is not there. Now, what's the point in having engineers if they have to be reskilled? So, demographic dividend can be a double-edged sword. Role of ADR. If you talk of ADR, that's a huge topic on tribunals. When you talk of ADR, it's not just arbitration. I would also say something which is quasi-judicial. It can be tribunals. And Madras Bar Association have been fighting this tribunal from 1991 against giving complete independence to tribunals. Now you talked about the British colonial past. In 1941, when the Income Tax Tribunal first started, it was put under the Ministry of Law to maintain its independence. And many tribunals are under the Ministry of Finance. So we filed an application saying that shift it to a nodal ministry, Ministry of Law. All tribunals should come under Ministry of Law. They should not function as parts of department. But the government said no, they don't want to do that. But I think that is ADR. If you have a robust tribunal system, it will be a huge confidence building measure for the industry. Today, now the GST tribunal started, they are starting off with 4-5 lakh cases pending. So how do you improve that system? How do you get, and since you raised this topic, this system of 4 and 5 years recruitment is not going to succeed. It is going to be a disaster for the tribunals. It will be a bad thing. I've been pleading that income tax tribunal, GST, they should be up to 62 like it was the old days. My finest moments in my bar was before the income tax tribunal. Wonderful members at those days because they all went up to 62.
So one thing I would like to ask your views is, what do you think is the role of education for the Viksit Bharat? Considering whenever we look at the annual budgets, the amount of budgetary spend on education is very low. Considering our demography, considering our numbers, what should be the path that the government should follow for education?
Yeah. My view, which is because I've been working with some schools, is first of all, in all the state level, this obsession with not encouraging English is a huge setback. Like in Tamil Nadu, for example, there are many government schools where the schools' admissions are dwindling. And people who are almost in the poverty line, they spend a substantial part of their income in putting their child to a private school. If they can put English in government schools, it will be a great, great improvement. This whole thing of, you must learn Tamil. Now, for example, I was shocked in Tamil Nadu, for example, the midday meal scheme. So the school where my wife also works is a thing. If you're a Tamil medium student, you will get free midday meal. English, what is the logic? In fact, if you read Lee Kuan Yew, I'm great fan of him. The first decision he took in Singapore was, he said English will be the language of Singapore. Because it was a thing of Malay, Chinese and Tamil. So he said English should be the language. If Singapore has to be on the world stage, we should learn English. And today all of us are united only by English. So I think that we should first focus on allowing English at the government schools itself so that these people get a level playing field.
Thank you.
Sir, one critical factor in Viksit Bharat would be the quality of bureaucracy. Any thoughts? Because administrative, you mentioned about 9:15, nobody is there in the offices. Because, the quality of legislation that we enact, because Parliament does not do the rightful work on, vetting the laws or drafts of the laws. And also the enforcement is with the bureaucracy, and that's where we struggle at.
Yes, it is definitely a problem. But one thing is that the selection process is such that normally bright people get into the class 1 services. Typically a person is quite well equipped to be at the IRS level or IAS level. But then the implementation becomes...
the reservation also has its impact.
Pardon me?
Reservation.
Reservation also has impact. In fact, since you raised this topic, the Mandal case, Indira Sani, they said very clearly that look, there should be reservation only at the stage of recruitment, not at the stage of promotion. They put a 50% limit and it should not be the stage of promotion. But then they gave that when in civil service, efficiency should be also not lost sight of. Efficiency is in Article 335 of the Constitution. But immediately after Mandal, they made the 75th, 77th, 82nd and 85th Amendment to get rid of all this. So now your promotion also reservation applies. Now when you go to promotion, what about seniority? So the person becomes this thing and then he gets accelerated seniority. So I did a case when I was a junior. There was a grade 2 nurse. She was there for 36 years and somebody who was 9 years became the head nurse. So she'll never reach the top because of all this. That does create heartburn also. Then good people don't try to join. That's the problem. But the whole, I think everything is a consequence. If you want that, then you pay the price for something else.
Sir, I had a question about regulations and sort of strangulation through regulations. And we are obviously a very over-regulated system, and regulatory cholesterol has become sort of a standard norm that everyone is so used to. What would be your approach? How to look at this? Where to start? What to chop off? How to sort of bring it under control, through statin or whatever you want to call it? Because this whole thing is choking up in addition to the, the civil services aspect. And when both are put together, so many regulations, so many problems with civil service, where do we begin and how do we go about it?
One good thing we should be happy is we are not alone. I've just been given somebody gifted me a book by Neil Gorsuch. He's a US Supreme Court judge, sitting judge. He has written a book called Overruled. That is, it's a pun on word. It's overruled, not overruling. It's too many rules. And the amount of legislation in the US is astonishing. Same thing in the EU also, the number of regulations. Now, one thing is to have less regulation, have a system of trust. I think we have drafting a particular provision where the whole thing is structured to prevent evasion and prevent leak. And in that case, we place a massive loss of economic progress, but our thing is geared towards catching the thief rather than, I mean, it's like saying that I won't give a loan because there are 2% NPAs. It's as silly as that. But that is it's a chronic problem. I don't know how we're going to have. Now, say for example, over-regulation. This is Income Tax Act 25. There's a golden opportunity of chopping it and make it much more simple, either a flat tax and so on. But the same thing in Companies Act. Other difficulty which we find now is that they are having smaller sections and too many rules. If you see, everything is as may be specified, as may be prescribed. So there's rule after rule after rule, which is quite dangerous. I spoke to a very civil servant. He's saying, "Kya kare? Parliament to suspend hota hai. All if you, I think there's no time to pass a law. So only way is to do rules which you can pass at one point of time. But over-regulation, but this regulation ever since I was in college. I don't know if in our lifetime we're going to see a point. Yeah. As the beautiful 5 words are, nothing changes if nothing changes."
Sir, you just spoke about India having youth and that being our asset. At the same time, there is this issue of social media and say online gaming menace. Now the recent judgments of Gamescraft and Jungly Games, as an expert in law, now over there the Supreme Court, while interpreting and giving its decision, relied on the debates or parliamentary debates and such things, which in your view was not technically correct, because the law was already laid down and they revisited the law. So as an expert in law, what conflict do you see as to, while interpreting the law, a judgment, and whether the Supreme Court, while laying down such judgments, is also trying to focus on the social aspects, and whether it is also something that is going to be an impediment or a boost to going forward to Viksit Bharat?
Yeah. Now you've taken online gaming to Viksit Bharat. So online gaming is a disclaimer because I appeared for Dream 11 in the Federation of Fantasy Sports. I think we have a highly moralistic view on games. I asked, what are the statistics to show that it has ruined the youth? You may have definitely some suicide will be there. Right? So statistically, there is nothing to show that online games are going to create a mass social problem. There is no such thing. I mean, there's no time to get into the whole thing of online gaming. But in 1867, the Public Gambling Act, Section 14 says, if it's a game of skill, then it is not gambling. Even Section 30 of the Contract Act, which makes wagering agreements void, only talks of games of chance. Now, I don't play any online game at all. For me personally, it's a complete waste of time, but it's a democracy. You can do what you like. If a person wants to, say, play this IPL match, it's 56 rupees or 45 rupees entry fee, you make your own teams, the whole scheme is there. It's a game of skill. Bridge is a game of skill, rummy is a game of skill. If a person wants to do that, why stop anybody? So the Supreme Court has now made, which I wrote and I said that, they say that the moment there is a stake or a bet, it is gambling. That is not correct. It is betting and gambling. It's only betting on a game of chance which becomes gambling. But the law is now turned, the review is filed, yeah. But you see, again, look at Lee Kuan Yew. When online games started in Singapore, he said, I'm against gambling, I'm against gaming, children should not be doing. But he said, if I stop it, it will go underground and people will go elsewhere. So he said, might as well allow it in Singapore. And in online gaming, after the first phase, from 1st October 2023, the entire regime had been changed. You have bet only on the initial deposit, the 28% tax, and it was working. Government was getting 18,000 crores of tax revenue. Overnight they banned it. I don't know what's the logic in suddenly banning it. And you see, always you can say public interest, society, country going to the dogs and so on, but that's not the thing. And which other civilized country has completely banned all kinds of online games? It's gone underground, no? So this also doesn't help Viksit Bharat. With all humility I say so. These are all, see, people will drink, people will go to the club. You can't expect to have some kind of a moralistic thing. Allow it within terms, you regulate it. Like in Tamil Nadu they regulated no online games from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. These games not allowed. Regulate it, but don't ban it.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we're talking of hurdles to overcome the Viksit Bharat, for Viksit Bharat. Views on the increasing corruption despite the regime changes and all, despite so much talk about one. And second, on the delay in getting justice, the whole judicial system, the way it is evolved or working or whatever, the delays, how can we have Viksit Bharat with these two, I would say, your views on that, sir?
No, it is a very, very serious problem. When I used to sit down and think, I said that two things which will curtail our growth will be lack of discipline and corruption. And it's like a bacteria in intestine. It won't kill you, but it will keep you ill all the time. You won't be a healthy person because of this. It has to be sorted out. I don't know if in your lifetime and my lifetime we're going to see corruption being eliminated. It is too deep rooted, too deep rooted. Yeah, especially in terms of election. The moment you're going to start giving cash for votes, then it's very difficult to cut out corruption. It's a much larger problem. I don't know. It's a sad thing, but that is going to be a permanent hurdle. It's like putting some ankle weights on your leg and expecting you to run.
Sir, you mentioned so many aspects which are required, of course, but what is one important thing which you think that will take India forward towards Viksit Bharat?
See, I don't think there is any magic bullet. There's not one magic bullet, Like, see, I personally feel if you ask me one thing we should focus on in the next 5-10 years is increase manufacture from 15 to 25%. That's the only way you can really get employed. And also, you'll be less dependent on other countries. Today, 85% of your intermediates come from China. All your balloons come from China. Like I said, the trolley comes from China. This comes from Vietnam. So unless you improve manufacture and start making it in India, enough of a market is there. See, today what happens is, in fact, this friend of mine who wrote this PhD thesis, very touching. One of the most touching parts is he has interviewed 16 industrialists in an industrial estate in Tamil Nadu. Not one child of the industrialist wants to continue the business. That is the most dangerous thing. See, engineering, how many people want to set up an industry? I'm in the Tamil Nadu panel on GST. I keep telling you, see, GST collection cross 1.5 lakh crores, 1.8 lakh crores. What they don't tell you is the increase is because of more imports, not because of domestic. So I've been asking the people in the Tamil Nadu, tell me how many new factories have started. That is the yardstick. Don't tell me GDP. What's your per capita income? Not the GDP.
I've had a signal from the President, so maybe one question we'll take final.
So what was the, I wanted to ask, what would be the role of agriculture in Viksit Bharat? The next 10 years, manufacturing I understand would be one part, but what is your take on agricultural sector?
Oh, I personally feel that the agriculture, the government had come with these farm bills was very good. Unfortunately, it got stuck into politics. I think agriculture is very important, and bringing free market into the agriculture system, not having this mandi system, the sugarcane control order and so on. Once it is free, it will be a huge boost. Not have the control system, yeah.
Thank you, sir, for a very enlightening session. I'll hand it over to Kinjal Bhuta for a vote of thanks, and we'll then close the session. Thank you, sir. Personally privileged to hear you.